If the Victrix BFG and the Stealth Ultra would have a baby, it would be the controller that we're going to talk about today, the Stealth Pivo, or is it Pivot, by Turtle Beach. Hi, I'm Clef and you're watching Game Tech Talk. Now this controller was sent for review, all opinions are my own and they get to see the video at the same time as everybody else. Let's dive in. Let's just go over what was in the box. You had a braided cable, Turtle Beach sticker, the dongle, which happens to have a button to pair, a quick start guide, and a quick how-to to change the modules. Kind of cool that they put this little thing over the sticks, and that shows you exactly the same thing, how to twist and operate the sticks. Of course, if we think of the Stealth Ultra and if we think of the Victrix BFG, that controller is very much a fusion between the two, and a lot of it is extremely cool, extremely interesting, and then some of it I wonder what the decision was. Of course, we'll cover it all in this video, so stay tuned to know if this is something you should get. Let's start with how the controller feels, all the buttons, everything. So we have membrane buttons, which is different from the Stealth Ultra that had mechanical. We have also a membrane D-pad, which also happened to be different from what we had on the Stealth Ultra. We have sticks that are Hall effect, very low tension. I'll put it on screen right about now. Of course, they click, and you can twist them, but this is not so much to use them, which we'll talk about during the video. You have your select start, which are also membrane, stiff ones. You have your home button, which also is on a membrane, quite stiff, much like what you had in older Xbox controllers. This wheel here will be a quick access to certain features of this controller, which of course we'll talk about. Here we have the share button. Your plus button is to change from the gamepad operation to the actual menu, where you can tweak on the fly. We have a nice grip here at the front. When turning it to the back, the grip continues right here. We also have two extra paddles. We have the locking mechanism that is for the flipping motion of these buttons and sticks. At the top, we have our two shoulder buttons, which are tactile. We have our triggers, which are analog, but you also have a hair trigger feature, which is a software corrected hair trigger. What this means is when you push it down, you don't feel a button, rather you feel that you're hitting kind of a wall, but it is software corrected to know that you're going from 0 to 100 pretty immediately, and they're quite sensitive. If this is something you want, like for quick action and you're shooting games, this will definitely serve you right. And then at the bottom, you have your 3.5mm jack, which does support headsets, stereo, as well as your microphone. And you also have a lot of audio features with this controller. Now, of course, you have your USB-C at the top as well. And that's pretty much it for the controller. One thing that makes this one extremely cool is whenever you unlock this mechanism, and then you need to twist your stick, so like so, you'll notice that when I twist it, it goes down, so it's a lot lower now. And you need to do the same on the other side if you want to change the other side. And from there, you can flip it. And I never remember, no, it's the other direction. There you go. So by the way, you cannot just keep going. There is an actual direction. And then as you can see here on this side, you have 6 buttons. And then of course here we have the regular layout, and I can always forget, whenever we switch it, we have a D-pad as well as 2 extra buttons. You have an option between the 2 different layouts, and of course you can lock it back. Now, one thing that I really like is once you lock it down, like you don't feel any flex. It really feels as if the controller is one unit and that it was designed that way. And that was something I was a little concerned with, because, you know, imagine pushing your buttons and you feel this whole unit flexing. It wouldn't be too nice, and it isn't the case. So that's a very, very good design. It shares a lot in common with the Stealth Ultra in terms of the aesthetic, not so much with the Victrix, because the Victrix is actually under the PDP branding, but PDP is now owned by Turtle Beach. However, I think they inspired themselves from this controller because, you know, this controller, you're able to flip your module, and this is kind of what we can do here with some key differences that I think makes it even better. Before we go any further in this video, this is something I'm going to address right away. The Victrix BFG really targets 2 types of players. The very shooter-centric kind of players, competitive ones, and the fighting games player. And when I reviewed the Victrix, one thing that I really enjoyed with it was definitely the fighting game experience. 100% comfortable saying that, in my opinion, this surpasses the Victrix BFG in terms of a fighting games gamepad. This is definitely one of the key points of this controller, and I'm selling my conclusion a little short here. If you are into fighting games, pay attention to this video because this controller is most likely for you. So let me just take these out of the frame because, you know, that's not what I'm reviewing today. We're talking about the Stealth Pivot. I guess, okay, for the rest of the video, I'm gonna say pivot. This is an Xbox controller. This is fully licensed, so you're gonna be able to use this on Xbox just as you can on PC, and you can also on Android. This does not work on iOS because there are no modes that is supported on that platform. And of course, another feature that you have with this one is this little screen. So once you power the controller, you'll see the screen come up where you see the logo, Stealth Pivot, the firmware version, and from there you can hit the plus, even if it's trying to pair right now because my dongle is not plugged in. If you hit plus, you can navigate the controller with the buttons, and regardless of what module you're on, you're going to be able to navigate it. You have a few functions that you can do with this one. For example, the social alerts which will let you have quick access to your Xbox messages using the controller. You also have access to your button mapping, so you can remap your paddles quickly on the fly. You also have your D-pad mapping. So if you want your D-pad, if you want to be on that module and you want your D-pad to activate your left stick or right stick or D-pad, you can also change that on the fly. Great feature, very fighting game centric. So I think they knew what they were doing with this one. And slider mapping. So by slider mapping, this is this little knob right there that you can click, and you can also go to the right or go to the left. So you can do some tweaks on the fly as well to have quick access to doing certain changes with the controller, and this is one way that you would go about it. Last but not least, you have Connect, where you can go ahead and either use wired, use the dongle, or use Bluetooth, but you can also link your app. Much like other controllers that will let you tweak the software on the fly, you can do this here as well. You can be playing on your Xbox, but you could have your phone connected to the app, allowing you to make quick changes on the fly in between matches, for example, by just leveraging the app, even if you're plugged in or you're using the dongle to play on your Xbox. You can also do that on your PC. You can also do that on your Android, because when you put it into pairing, both Bluetooth signals are going to appear. So you can have the Bluetooth for gaming on one device and the Bluetooth for the app control on a different device altogether. Now, the other thing that this one has is Rumble, and the Rumble implementation is pretty sound, pretty good. First party experience is what you have here. You also have the grip and trigger rumble in this one, so you do have access to both, so you're not losing anything in terms of features when talking about Xbox. You can also tweak all these settings that I just showed you into the software, and we'll move to my PC to have a glimpse as to what this looks like, and also talk about my testing in Aim Labs and in Street Fighter. Let's start with the software. You can see your version and you'll see the Stealth Pivot. When you click on it, you'll have an overview of your controller and its settings. You can save profiles to your device, but you can also save them on the controller, so that's very nice. For the buttons, you can change your extra ones. You can also change the slider value. That's the knob that I was talking about. You have a few options in there. And when it comes to D-pad, you can also change to left sticks, right stick, or D-pad. When looking at buttons, you can remap everything, but you'll notice here that you have left stick X-axis max, left stick X-axis minimum. Same goes for Y-axis and right stick, all the same, and Pro Aim. These settings let you tweak your sticks on the fly. We'll talk a little more about it during the stick testing portion. When looking at the sticks, you can address the response. Unfortunately, there's no chart to know what you're changing. You can also address the dead zone of your sticks, and you can do that for both the left and the right. You can also test them as well at the same time. When looking at triggers, all the same, you can test them, you can address the dead zone, and you'll see also the difference if you have the hair trigger on or off, the graduality and how quickly that it activates. Very rapid if that's what you're looking for. When looking at audio, you can address the volume of the game, your mic monitoring, your chat mix, and your super earring mode, which will give you certain equalizer tweaking to your audio. And also, I'll talk a little more about that very shortly. You can address the colors as well, which will be the two little rectangles close to the Xbox logo. That's what is adjustable RGB on this controller. Of course, you can close it all together if you want. You can address the vibration of both your triggers and grips. I wish the app would let you feel the changes, but it doesn't. And then you can address the power mode, how quickly that it goes to sleep, the brightness of your controller, and so on and so forth. You can have a specific color for your social media. As well, you can calibrate your sticks and triggers. And last but not least, you can also check the firmware for both your transceiver and your controller. So when testing the sticks, I find that they showcase this unexpected nature that Hall effect often has, where the sensor seems to go further than you intended to. So it was very difficult overall to control. Not the worst sticks by any means, but far from being the best I've seen, and that is not considering outside of Hall effect. I'm really keeping it specific to Hall effect types of sticks, and it's a behavior that is not new to Hall effect. It's very common, and unfortunately those sticks did not give me any different results. I also tried, although I don't have footage of that, I also tried Pro Aim, and what Pro Aim does is it will drastically reduce your stick's curve based off of the setting. So you can have it affect your stick a lot or a little, or to a full stop if you want. The problem with this is you have to hold the button at all times. It's not something that you toggle. So while yes, it may help you mitigate the sticks that are aggressive, you still have that unreliable nature that Hall effect has. And because those sticks are very loose, I find that it doesn't help the issue. It makes it a little more obvious. Now with that said, Pro Aim did help a little bit. I did get better scores when using it, but hardly. It wasn't that big of a difference. And then you can also address your axes. And again, to me, it's just when using Aim Labs, yes, it was usable and it did help, but in the middle of a gunfight that happens in a split second, I think it's going to be a very steep learning curve to learn to master such a tool, because you'll have to hold the button for you to activate that feature. You cannot just click it and rely on it knowing that you have your enemy around the corner kind of thing. So yeah, it's there, it's cool that it's there, but just expect to have to learn to work with it. It's not something that, in my opinion, is just pick up and grab. It's not that simple. And when looking at the D-pad, oh my lord, is that a great D-pad. What you're looking at is the very first time I've pulled anything on this gamepad. And the fact that I was just like having Dragon Punch after Dragon Punch this easily, I had to pause and flip the module just to see like what happens when I change the ergonomics of it. And it was extremely consistent. The D-pad is by far one of the best options I have ever seen in any controller. Now, I find that a great D-pad is easier to pull than great sticks. That's me personally. That doesn't mean that there aren't terrible options on the market. There definitely are, but this one manages to stand apart with how good that it is. All right, let's continue with the rest of the review. The last specific feature to address is super hearing mode. And what it does is it will amplify footsteps in games. And I actually have used that feature before on their other controllers and also headset, which I'll be reviewing one shortly, the Stealth 700. Stay tuned for that one. After playing with it, I was trying to understand how it works, and I think I now do, because you can even watch a video of someone playing and it's gonna work. So it's not as if it reads game data, so there's no risks. What it does is it will isolate certain hertz of audio and it will amplify other hertz. Footsteps often have a similar sound in games, and it will amplify that range of audio. So why is that important? Well, while you use the feature, yes, it does amplify footsteps, but it will also amplify other audio in that range. So it can become quite intense. Personally, I'm not a fan of it. I definitely understand why some people would want to use it. It's just not a feature that is appealing to me personally. Now, the other thing is, what's also kind of funny is you don't have to use the controller. You just have to use the audio output of the controller. So if you wanted to play with your mouse and keyboard while having your headphone plugged in your controller and use that feature, you absolutely could. So you could leverage your controller, because it will definitely amplify footsteps, but also other things as well. All right, let's move on towards the conclusion and my overall feedback. At $130 US, this controller is not cheap. It does have some pretty impressive qualities, namely the D-pad and just the overall fighting centric kind of experience that it provides. But when thinking specifically of shooting, I was a little bit disappointed. I was a little bit let down. And to me, it almost feels like Turtle Beach knew that when looking at the pulling rate. And I understand that Xbox apparently caps it at a certain limit for competitiveness, 250 hertz. Here, I was getting around 160 and 170. The sticks are Hall effect, so that's nice, no drift, you know, so you're not gonna have that kind of issue. But in terms of the curve, it wasn't my favorite. Now, of course, and thankfully, you do have tools in there, as we've talked about during the testings, to sort of address that, but I feel like the tools are a little too limited to have this controller be something that is very shooting centric. Which brings me to what this controller is, in my opinion, really designed for, and what I believe Turtle Beach is really going after in terms of market is the fighting genre and the fighting games players. That layout is so good for fightings. Not only do you have access to a lot of buttons, more than most, because you have these two extra here, and then you have these remappable ones, and you still have the remappables in the back, by the way, but then you have the ability to have your D-pad up or down depending on what you prefer. And that D-pad, as you could see in the testings, oh wow, was it so good. Something that I highly praised when I reviewed the Stealth Ultra was its D-pad. And to me, in terms of feel, that D-pad is amazing. It glides better than any other D-pad I've tested. Extremely responsive, super easy to pull the moves. So it left me with such a high praise that when I touched this one that was membrane, although I do prefer D-pad membranes, I do understand some of the benefits with mechanical. And I gotta say, I was not expecting the results that I got with this one. It is extremely, extremely good because you retain that super awesome feel and texture that it has, super easy to glide. But I do feel like what you are getting in responsiveness, in reliability, you may be losing in terms of speed. It's the only thing, but sometimes it's not about being able to pull the moves the fastest, not that it would be slow here, but I do think because this almost kind of aluminum-like feel on the Stealth Ultra and the texture overall allows me to be a little faster on it. This one, where I lose speed, you gain in just the efficiency of the inputs. It's impossible to fail with this control. I don't see how I could. And again, usually I pick up a controller and I have a certain, there's like a very, very quick to adjust learning curve, but there's one. Here there was none. It was immediately. What you saw in the footage was the very first time that I tested the controller. It was instant. It just worked right off the bat. You know, to me, it says something. And then the ability to change from D-pad to left stick super quickly if you have a game that it does give you a little more linearity with the sticks. Now, is that worth $130? I don't know that it is. That's the thing. I kind of wish that this controller was a little bit better in terms of its overall balance. Not that it's bad, it's good, but I was expecting great at the price point. So I'll put it this way. In terms of just a shooting centric controller, I would still favor the Stealth Ultra, which is considerably more expensive. However, I do have to give credit that you do get somewhat close with this one, but not quite there. Now, when talking about fighting game, this completely demolishes the Victrix BFG, which was one of the great controllers for fighting games, and it completely takes over the Stealth Ultra as well. I just keep going back to that because I do think it is one strength of this product and a very good one at that. So if that speaks to you in any kind of way, you know, and you want to give it a try, I don't see how you could be disappointed. But manage your expectations if this is the controller that you want to bring into COD. You know, to me, it's not where I'd go. I feel like a G7 SE has such better sticks. Now, this one, of course, you have wireless. And in terms of latency, nothing felt wrong. It felt responsive. There was no issues there whatsoever. It was really just the Hall effect sticks. And ideally, I would like to not have to rely on something like Pro Aim, the features that they have. At least they have options that exist to sort of mitigate the sticks on their default state. But again, I would ideally not have to want to rely on something like that to pull out some performances. And if for you have kind of a 50-50 balance, then I'm sure you will get accustomed to this controller, but I would want you to understand that you are sacrificing in terms of the aiming capabilities of this product. And so that is it, guys. Let me know how you feel. I'm making some quick changes. It's not quite finished. You probably noticed if it's not your first video here. So let me know how you feel about that as well, if ever you feel like it. Thank you very much for watching and clicking on the video. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment box. And as always, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.